few months back, I was driving through Appalachia. I'd been a truck driver for most of my life. At 34, I was ready to reconnect with some family after years apart. I was excited, feeling a thrill I hadn't felt in a long time. The sun was setting, and a thick fog rolled in quickly. The roads were familiar, but they always took on a different feel at dusk. As I drove, everything seemed normal. My radio played soft tunes, and I started thinking about a warm meal when I arrived. But then I saw her. A woman was standing by the roadside waving her hand. She looked rough, in a tattered dress, and her hair was a wild mess. I thought she just needed a ride. I'd picked up hitchhikers before. They often had interesting tales. So, I pulled over. Once she climbed in, I felt the temperature drop. It was sudden and icy. I glanced over at her. She smiled, but something felt off. I shrugged it off. Maybe I was just tired. Then she began talking. Her voice had an odd rhythm as she shared strange stories about the woods around us. She talked about local legends, about things that lived in those woods. My heart raced a little. I felt uneasy, but I chalked it up to her wild stories. The road seemed more isolated as she spoke, and it felt like we were being watched. I glanced at her again, and for a quick moment her eyes looked dark, like there was relief, or maybe something more unsettling in them. At one point, she leaned closer and whispered a warning about not going into the woods at night. I wasn't sure if she was joking or not. Suddenly, she stopped talking. The silence felt thick. The only sound was the engine humming and what sounded like whispers coming from outside. I turned to look at her, but I didn't know what to say. Then we reached a small town. I slowed down to drive through. I looked over to say something to her, but the seat was empty. She was gone. Just like that, she vanished. Panic washed over me. I sat still for a moment, confused. Had she even been real? I couldn't shake the chill in my bones or the tightness in my chest. I started driving again, but that unease wouldn't leave me. I felt heavy in the silence. I knew something was off, but maybe I was just tired. The tales she told echoed in my mind, tales I had never thought to consider before. Was she a person or just a shadow? I kept wondering. The thought made my skin crawl. I hadn't seen that woman again, but I couldn't forget her. Those winding roads felt darker now. I was never sure if I had driven through just another small town or something more mysterious. The air felt thicker, and I couldn't shake the feeling of being watched. Even now, I still think about that ride and the woman who vanished without a trace. The next day, I couldn't shake the feeling from the night before. I had planned to visit my aunt, but instead, I found myself driving down the same lonely road. I felt compelled to retrace my steps, to look for anything, footprints, a sign, anything that could explain the encounter. As I drove, the fog hung low like a thick blanket. It was eerily quiet. I pulled over at the spot where I had picked her up. The trees loomed around me, casting long shadows in the dim light. I felt uneasy, but I had to know if I could find her. I stepped out of the truck, the chill biting at my skin. I walked towards the woods, drawn in as if the trees were beckoning. Instinctively, I called out, "Hello? Is anyone there?" My voice echoed back, but only the rustling leaves responded. I scanned the area, my heart thumping in my chest. That's when I saw it, a flash of red fabric caught on a branch. I approached cautiously, my mind racing. The closer I got, the more I realized it was part of a dress, tattered and weathered, just like the one the woman had worn. My stomach twisted. This couldn't be a coincidence. I reached out to grab it, feeling the rough texture beneath my fingers. As I did, a sudden gust of wind whipped through the trees, sending a shiver down my spine. I turned around, convinced the woman might be behind me, but there was only silence. Driving back felt heavier. The road seemed endless, and the sky darkened faster than I remembered. Each curve held a sense of dread. I thought about the stories she told, the legends of things lurking in the woods, Were there really things out there? My heart raced with images of those tales. When I finally reached my aunt's house, she wasn't home. The silence felt suffocating. I stepped inside, hoping a familiar place could ease my mind. As I moved through the living room, something caught my eye, a photo on the wall. It was an old family picture, but one face stood out among the crowd. There she was, the woman from the road. I stumbled back, my breath hitching as I struggled to process what I was seeing. Was it really her? I grabbed the photo and studied it closely. The same wild hair, a familiar smile. But how could she be in my aunt's photo? It felt like the ground shifted beneath me. I've never been one to believe in ghosts or spirits, but this felt different. The unease from the road crept back in. I needed answers. Just then, the front door creaked open, and I froze. I heard footsteps behind me. Someone was in the house. I turned slowly, my heart racing. The sound of footsteps grew louder, and I felt a chill run down my spine. Was it my aunt? I hadn't heard her come in. Maybe it was just the wind making it sound like someone was there, but deep down I knew that wasn't true. I took a tiny step away from the photo, holding my breath as I strained to hear more. The footsteps paused, and I stilled, feeling the hairs on my arms prick up. "Aunt Linda?" I called out, my voice sounding faint and uncertain. No answer. Just silence again. Unease settled in my stomach like a stone, but curiosity pushed me to move closer to the door. I knew I shouldn't, but I had to know. My legs felt heavy, like lead, but I forced myself to take another step. As I neared the doorway, the footsteps shifted again, slowly, as if someone was pacing just beyond sight. I reached for the doorknob, my hands trembling, and as I turned it, a sharp knock echoed from the other side of the room. My breath caught in my throat. I froze, caught in a moment of dread. I wanted to bolt, to run out of the house, but I was rooted to the spot. Another knock, louder this time, sounding almost insistent. "Who's there?" I managed to say, my voice barely above a whisper. The footsteps stopped, and a heavy silence wrapped around me. Then, just like that, I heard a soft, familiar laugh. It was the laugh of the woman from the road. My mind raced, a surge of confusion and fear crashing over me. How could this be? I clutched the photo tightly in my hand, still trying to process everything. Hadn't she just been a stranger? Now her laugh filled the room like a haunting melody. I backed away, turning to head toward the kitchen where there was a phone. I needed to call someone. But as I moved, the air changed, becoming colder, heavier. It was suffocating. I felt a presence, like a weight pressing down on my shoulders. Panic emerged, threatening to swallow me whole. Just as I reached the doorframe, it opened slightly, as if encouraging me to step through. "Stay." A whisper floated through the air, soft, yet insistent. The voice sent shivers down my spine. I didn't recognize it, but I knew I wasn't alone. My heart raced as I turned back, scanning the dimly lit living room. Where had that laugh come from? Was I truly losing my grip on reality? There was no way I could linger here longer. I had to find my aunt and get out. I bolted for the exit, ready to force my way back into the daylight. And that's when I heard it again, a rustle from behind me, a shadow flitting across the wall. I spun around, and everything went dark. The room was swallowed by an unnatural darkness, and at that moment, I realized my mistake. I had opened the door, but I had no idea what lay on the other side. I stumbled through the thickening darkness, my palms pressing against the walls as I tried to navigate. It was as if the house had morphed into a labyrinth, every direction feeling wrong. I shivered, my breath shallow, unsure if it was the cold air or fear wrapping around me. There was no sound now, no laughter, no footsteps, just an eerie silence that screamed at me to leave. I felt the walls closing in, and when I reached what I hoped was the door, my fingers fumbled with the handle. Twist, push, pull. Nothing. Panic rose and I began to pound on the door. "Let me out! Anyone!" My voice echoed, desperate and raw. I backed away, my heart hammering against my ribs, slamming into the world outside that felt so close yet miles away. Suddenly, a creaking sound broke the stillness. I turned quickly, staring back into the dark. The shadows seemed to move, twisting and forming shapes that sent chills racing down my spine. I was not alone. Then, out of the darkness, a figure emerged. My breath hitched. It was a woman, draped in a long, flowing dress. Her hair fell around her shoulders like a dark waterfall. She looked familiar, but I couldn't place her. The next moment felt unreal. "You shouldn't have come here," she said, her voice melodic yet laced with an unsettling undertone. "Who are you?" I stammered, feeling my voice tremble in the silence. She stepped closer, and I noticed her eyes, deep pools that seemed to shimmer with secrets. "You woke us," she said. "It's time to learn the truth." The room brightened slightly, illuminating the walls. I gasped when I saw them, dozens of photographs hanging, all of people I didn't recognize. Each one bore a date etched below it, some of them going back decades. I forced myself to step closer, my curiosity piquing despite the terror coiling in my stomach. In one corner, I saw the woman from the road, the same soft smile, the same familiar laugh that had echoed through the living space. My heart dropped. Who were these people? Why did they seem to be linked with that laugh? I turned to the woman before me, ready to demand answers, but she was gone. In her place was a gust of wind that swept through the room, scattering the photographs from their places. They fluttered like leaves in a storm, revealing more faces, strangers and familiar ones, all strangely twisted with expressions of dread and sorrow. I felt sick. All these faces, each one had a question screaming for answers, but the rush of confusion drowned them out. Just then I realized the room wasn't empty. Behind the photographs, shadowy forms began to emerge, slowly shifting forward, their eyes fixed on me. My blood turned cold. They didn't look welcoming. I tried to step back, but stumbled, my heart racing again. Clutching the photo tightly, I searched for an escape, the urgency to break free coursing through me. And that's when I heard the first whisper, soft but sharp enough to cut through the din. "Stay with us." It echoed, the shadows stretching like fingers reaching for me. I was trapped, and I had no idea what to do next. I could feel the shadows closing in, their whispers growing louder, intertwining with the dread in my chest. "Stay with us." The phrase pulsed through my mind, and I shuddered. The idea of being a part of whatever this was terrified me. What did they want? I glanced back at the photographs scattered across the floor. I needed to find answers, to untangle whatever mess I had walked into. I reached for one of the pictures, a face with hollow eyes staring straight back at me. I recognized the man. It was someone I'd seen earlier at the party right before I left. My skin crawled. I struggled to rise, trying to silence the voices around me. I pushed myself against the wall, but there was no escape. The shadows whispered again, their words barely tangible, like a fading memory just out of reach. I had to get out. The feeling of isolation pressed down on me. Just then I noticed a flicker at the far side of the room. I squinted through the darkness, focusing on it as it danced. A light, a tiny glimmer guiding me. It seemed like a way out, a beacon holding its hand out, inviting me to come closer. I hesitated. Was it another trap? Desperation fueled my courage, and I took a step toward it. With each step, the whispers grew frantic, urging me to back away. "Stay with us." But I couldn't turn back now. I reached the light, wincing as a chill shot through my body like ice water. It was a door, barely visible, almost camouflaged against the wall. "Is this the way out?" I breathed, hopeful and terrified. The moment I touched the doorknob, the shadows surged forward. their forms twisted, their hollow eyes now glinting with something I couldn't decipher. Anger, fear, hunger. It sent a jolt of panic through me. I twisted the knob, ready to bolt, but the door wouldn't budge. Suddenly, behind me, the photographs began to throb as though alive. Their faces morphing into anguished expressions, mouths stretching in silent screams. I pressed harder against the door, my heart racing. I could hear the soft whispers morphing into frantic cries. "You must stay." Then, without warning, the door flung open, and the rush of cold air hit me like a tidal wave. It pulled me forward, and I stumbled through, almost losing my balance as I crossed the threshold. I hesitated only for a moment, glancing back at the shadows pouring through the door. "Come back," they cried in unison, their voices now mingled with a deep, resonating echo that vibrated within me, igniting a primal fear. Without looking back, I sprinted down a dimly lit corridor, a new urgency bubbling up inside me. I had to find another way out. Each step felt heavy with the weight of what I was leaving behind. The darkness still chased me, and the whispers persisted. Then everything went dark again. The light around me flickered out, leaving me enveloped in blackness once more. I couldn't hear anything except my racing heartbeat, and I stumbled without a sense of direction. The shadows were still there, lurking, waiting for me to falter. I had escaped one nightmare only to fall into another. But the real question was, how long could I keep running? I felt my way along the corridor, cursing the darkness that enveloped me. Panic flared within me like a flame, casting shadows deeper than before. My fingers brushed against the cold, rough walls, seeking any sign of a window or another door. I needed to see the world outside to know I wasn't being swallowed whole. Just as I thought I might be completely lost, a soft glow flickered to my right. I barely had a moment to register my surprise before instinct kicked in. I rushed toward it, prayer and desperation fueling my movement. The light pulsed more brightly, teasing me with the promise of safety. As I reached the source, I squinted and found myself staring at a small, open door leading into a room that was brighter than the hallway. The walls here seemed to breathe, fading into shades of white and yellow. I cautiously stepped through, half expecting something to grab me from behind. Inside, the air was thick, smelling faintly of damp wood. Piles of old books littered the floor, scattered like the photographs from before. I stepped carefully, trying to avoid tripping over them. The unsettling sensation of being watched crept back, skittering down my spine. Then I noticed it, a single book laid open atop a dusty table. I edged closer, compelled by a force I couldn't understand. As I read the faded words, my stomach dropped. It was filled with names and dates, details of everyone who had mysteriously vanished in this part of Appalachia over the last century. My breath quickened as I searched for a familiar name. Each entry was eerily similar, but one stood out, a man with hollow eyes. I had seen him. He was the same man from the photograph. My pulse raced. Had he been lured here too? Suddenly the shadows whispered again, their voices echoing through the room more clearly. "You cannot escape," they taunted, twisted and mocking. "You belong to us now." I shot up, heart racing in my chest. The door I had just entered slammed shut. Panic set in as I pushed against it, but it didn't budge. I had come too far only to be trapped in yet another dark space. How was this possible? That's when I saw it. A reflection caught in the glass of an ancient mirror hanging on the far wall. It wasn't just my own face staring back at me. It was the hollow-eyed man from the pictures. Panic crystallized into horror as I realized he wasn't just a ghost. He was part of this room, part of this nightmare. "Stay with us." His lips mouthed silently. I pounded on the door, desperate to break free. The air thickened as the shadows entwined around me, their presence suffocating. I couldn't breathe, couldn't think. My instincts screamed at me to run, to fight, but all I felt was a fragile grip on reality slipping away. Then the mirror began to ripple, almost like water. I stumbled back in fear. If I was truly losing my grip, my only chance might be breaking through. Without thinking, I lunged at the mirror, my determination greater than my fear. If I was going to face whatever lay on the other side, it would be on my own terms. The moment I crashed into the glass, everything shattered, both the mirror and my expectations, and darkness swallowed me whole once again. I stumbled through the void, the darkness heavier than before, pressing against my skin. From the weightlessness came a jolt, a sudden crunch of glass beneath my feet. I was on the ground now, flat on my back. The air was cold and crisp, filling my lungs with a sharp bite. I pushed myself up, blinking rapidly. I was outside, or at least it looked like the woods. Dense trees loomed over me, their branches swaying gently as if whispering secrets. Moonlight cut through the leaves, casting jagged shadows on the forest floor. I scrambled to my feet, bewildered. Had I escaped? My heart raced as I looked around. It still felt wrong, like a trick. The stillness felt too deep, too unnatural. I took a few hesitant steps forward, glancing back, half expecting to see that door or the mirror, both missing. Instead, there were only the trees and the yawning emptiness of night. Then I heard it, a soft rustle. I froze, the blood draining from my face. The sound had come from my left. I turned slowly, holding my breath. Peeking out from behind a tree was a figure, half hidden in shadows. I squinted but couldn't make out their features. "Hello?" I called, my voice shaking. The figure stepped forward, and my pulse quickened. It was a woman, her long hair hanging tangled around her face. Her clothes were tattered, frayed like they had weathered many storms. But it was her eyes that gripped me, a familiar hollow gaze. "Where am I?" I stammered, confusion mixing with dread. "You shouldn't have come here," she whispered, her voice echoing with a haunting familiarity. "They'll find you soon." "Who will?" I demanded, though I felt the blood rushing in my ears, trapping my thoughts. I took a step back, uneasy. "The shadows, they don't let go." My legs trembled. She was right. I could feel something lurking in the darkness, a presence closing in. Panic clawed at my throat. "I just want to leave," I said, nearly pleading. She glanced toward the trees, her expression filled with an emotion I couldn't decipher. "You must hide. They're drawn to fear." Before I could respond, a flash of movement caught my eye. I glanced over my shoulder and my breath hitched. Shadows darted between the trees, not just shapes, but forms. Whispers rose around me, chilling the air. "Come with me," the woman urged, her hand outstretched. "Please." Without thinking, I reached for her, desperate for a way out. But as my fingers brushed against her skin, she shrieked, backing away as if burned. "No, you can't," she cried, her voice panic-laced. The shadows swarmed closer, whispering promises and threats, mixing into a sinister symphony. My eyes darted back to the trees, heart pounding wildly. Either choice felt wrong, and then I saw it. A flash of luminescence off in the distance, a promise like the flickering light I had chased before. Maybe that could lead me out. My gut told me to run, to chase whatever glimmer I could find. Ignoring the woman's cry, I bolted toward the light, the darkness nipping at my heels. As I sprinted, the whispers grew louder, clawing at my thoughts. My mind raced with questions. What had I stumbled into? And would I survive to tell anyone what I'd found? I could almost feel the shadows closing in, forcing me toward that glow. It felt like the last thread of hope. But with every step, the uncertainty gnawed at me. I pushed forward, heart thundering, praying I wouldn't regret my choice. I sprinted toward the light, the cold air biting at my lungs. The whispers behind me intensified, swirling into a deafening chorus of torment. I could hardly focus. My heart pounded louder than the voices, drowning out their sinister intent. As I ran, the trees began to thin, revealing a small clearing ahead. The luminescent glow pulsed like a heartbeat. I reached it, skidding to a halt. What I found left me breathless. There, in the center of the clearing, was a glowing orb, radiating a soft blue light. It floated just above the ground, illuminating patches of wildflowers that thrived in the night. The light felt warm and inviting, beckoning me closer. I took a cautious step forward, my instincts wrestling with each other. "Touch it," a voice whispered, not from the shadows but from within the glow. I hesitated, unsure of what lay beyond this ethereal invitation. Before I could decide, a rustle erupted from behind me. I spun around, heart racing again. The shadows had gathered at the edge of the clearing, dark and swirling. They seemed to pulse with anger, as if my defiance had stirred them. "Don't let them get you!" The woman's voice rang out suddenly, shattering the chaos. I looked back to see her silhouette just outside the clearing, her terrified expression twisted in desperation. I glanced between her and the glowing orb. "What do I do?" I shouted, panic flooding my voice. In that moment, the shadows surged forward, spilling into the clearing like ink in water. I felt a cold dread chilling my spine. I had to act. Frantic, I lunged for the orb, hands outstretched. The warmth enveloped me the moment I made contact. Light flooded my vision and I was pulled into its embrace. The world around me faded, swallowed whole by the intensity of the glow. But then, it all changed. The light flickered violently, and I felt a jarring force push me back. I stumbled, disoriented, and fell onto the ground once more. Now I was lying in the clearing, the glow dimmer but still present. The shadows circled, restless and furious, caught at the edge as if unable to cross into the light. I glanced up and saw the woman trapped outside the aura. Fear washed over her face as she peered into the orb, desperation evident in her eyes. "Help! You have to help me!" she cried, but her words echoed as the shadows grew bolder, darting closer. Everything in me screamed to save her, but the orb seemed to anchor me. Just then I noticed something glinting on the ground beside the orb. I reached for it, fingers brushing against a small vial filled with a swirling liquid. My mind raced. What if this was the key to freeing her, or maybe a way to protect myself? I had to choose. But even as I hesitated, a flicker of darkness sliced through the air around me, inching closer. I could sense the shadows rallying, driven by hunger. That's when I sensed it, a new presence, something not quite right. I could feel eyes watching from the tree line. Someone or something was waiting. I clutched the vial tightly, the weight of it grounding me as the shadows loomed ever closer, and I realized I didn't have much time. I was frozen, the vial clutched tightly in my trembling hand. The shadows crept forward, their chilling presence crawling across my skin. I could feel the eyes from the trees, cold and judgmental, but I couldn't turn to look. I had to focus on the woman, the glowing orb, and the choice ahead of me. "Please, help me!" Her voice trembled thick with fear. There was anguish etched into her tone that felt almost physical. I wanted to shout back that I was trying, but the shadows continued to stir. They flicked and twisted, like angry serpents ready to strike. I glanced at the vial again. It shimmered faintly beneath the orb's dying light, almost as if it were calling to me. Should I break it open? What would happen if I did? "Trust your instincts," the voice from the orb urged again, more insistent this time. I took a deep breath, my heart racing. I wasn't sure if it was a good idea, but I couldn't just stand there, paralyzed. With a rush of determination, I stood up, still clutching the vial. I had to save her. That thought became a mantra, pushing me beyond my fear. I stepped closer to the woman, and the shadows recoiled slightly, sensing my newfound resolve. "Stay back!" I yelled, my voice wobbling but loud. They hesitated, swirling ominously, but it gave me the confidence to keep moving towards the glow. "I'm coming for you!" The woman's face lit up with a flicker of hope. "Hurry! They want you to hesitate. Don't let them!" She was right. Doubt tried to creep back in, but I brushed it away. I thrust the vial forward, unsure how to use it. "What do I do with this?" I shouted, urgency drenching my voice. "Pour it around the orb," she cried. I nodded, finding a burst of courage as I lunged toward the orb. The shadows shrieked, higher and more frantic. I poured the vial's contents around the glowing light as quickly as I could, panic mixing with an odd sense of clarity. The liquid hissed as it met the ground, and a bright flash erupted. The shadows recoiled, bending backward as if repelled by a force field. The orb glowed fiercely again, a radiant blue that caught the darkness and pushed it away. As I staggered back, I felt an energy surge through the clearing. It was as if the light was claiming dominion, asserting that it would not be overpowered. "Now, grab my hand!" the woman shouted, reaching through the shimmering barrier. I took a step forward, but the shadows lashed out, splintering into tendrils that reached for me. I flinched, eyes darting between the woman and the writhing black mass. "I can't let you go," I screamed, pushing against the feelings of despair. Then everything shifted. The shadows broke as waves of light poured from the orb. They flicked through the dark like an ignition catching fire. The shadows withered and shrank back, drawn away from me and the woman. I felt something pierce my gut, a mix of excitement and fear. Just as her fingers brushed mine, I heard a loud crack from the tree line. Instinctively, I turned my head. Something lunged from the shadows, a figure cloaked in darkness, its eyes glittering like pale moons in the night. I gasped, the icy grip of terror coiling around me. "Get her out!" The voice from the orb commanded, and without thinking, I pulled the woman toward me, trying to pull her into the light. The darkness lashed out again, eager to reclaim what it lost. In that fraught moment, I realized I was faced with more than just shadows. The true horror was still waiting, lurking just beyond the veil of protection. I felt the tension surge like a heavy wave as the darkness pressed in, relentless and hungry. The woman's fingers slipped through the panic, tangling with mine as I yanked her closer to the orb. I could feel the fevered grasp of the shadows lashing around us, and I knew we had only seconds to escape their grasp. "Hold on to me," I shouted, my voice barely breaking through the cacophony of whispers. The orb glowed fiercely, radiating warmth that contrasted sharply with the freezing touch of the shadows. Light pulsed in sync with my racing heart, each beat urging us forward. With a desperate tug, I pulled the woman toward the orb, just as the dark figure lunged from the tree line, its form looming like an oncoming storm. I glimpsed its hollow eyes, deep as night, and I felt a primal panic claw at my insides. This was no mere darkness. It felt sentient, malevolent. "Now!" The voice from the orb echoed again, more urgent this time. The words acted like a lifeline, snapping me from the debilitating fear. I flung myself and the woman into the light, praying it was strong enough to shield us. In that instant, the world erupted in blinding brilliance. The shadows screeched as they were cast back, recoiling from the orb's glow. A whirlwind of energy enveloped us, lifting us off our feet, and I felt the heady rush of escape coursing through my veins. It was all-consuming, and for a fleeting moment I tasted freedom, a sweet, intoxicating elation as we sailed through the light. But just as quickly, the sensation waned. A sudden chill coursed through me, snatching the sweet taste of relief. The brightness began to dull, and I was left clutching the woman's hand, surrounded by an abyss once again. The clearing had disappeared, and instead we tumbled into a barren landscape. I gasped for air, still holding on to her tightly. "Did we make it?" I asked, my voice trembling as I scanned the horizon. "What's happening?" she asked, her eyes wide with confusion and fear. "Where are we?" I shook my head, trying to gather my thoughts. The air felt heavier here, laden with an unseen weight, and the world around us was a swirling haze. There were no trees, no familiar landmarks, just a vast expanse of the unknown. Then, From the corners of my vision, the shadows began to creep back, forming twisted outlines against the backdrop of an eerie twilight. They flickered, teasingly, and I felt a chill creep down my spine, as if they recognized us, celebrated our arrival, and hungered for our surrender. "No, we need to go," I cried, pulling her away. We scrambled through the mist, praying for a way out. But the whispers surged again, echoing deeper now, filled with frustration, like they had snared us in a web. Frantically, I looked at her. "We have to find a way to fight them off." But she stared at the shadows, her face draining of hope. "What if there's no way out? They don't let go." Her voice trailed off, and I saw the despair knit in her brow. I couldn't let her succumb to that feeling. "We can't give in to fear. There has to be something we can do," I urged, my mind racing as the shadows drew closer, stretching their dark fingers toward us. I'd heard stories," she murmured, glancing back at the encroaching dark. "They said the light's a conduit, but it's also what binds us to the darkness. If we tread too lightly, we might become part of it." The weight of her words hung heavy between us. "Then we fight together. We embrace it and break their hold," I declared, the conviction surging within me. With a resolute nod, she gripped my hand tightly. "Then let's make this our fight." We surged forward into the impending shadows, pouring our fear into strength. They closed in thickly, their whispers rising in an urgent crescendo, threatening to engulf us. But we pressed on, determined to carve our own path through this chaos. And as we stood arm in arm, I felt a strange warmth radiating from within, igniting in contrast to the freezing darkness surrounding us. Was it the light from the orb echoing within? Or a newfound defiance forming? The whispers faded momentarily as the shadows recoiled, which gave us a spark of confidence. We shouted together, unleashing whatever power we held deep inside to push back against the encroaching darkness. "You have no hold over us." The shadows shrieked, fraying and retreating against our resolve. They twisted and fought, but the warmth surged brighter, forcing the darkness back. I wasn't sure if it was truly light we radiated or sheer willpower, but we had become a force. And just like that, I knew, amidst the uncertainty, that we had forged our own path, even if the road ahead remained clouded. What lay beyond the horizon was unknown. Could we emerge into the world, or would we remain forever entwined in this echoing darkness? I still didn't know. But I wasn't alone anymore, and I fought to face whatever lay in wait.